On the Road of Recovery with Jeremiah from Rocky River. How are you doing today?
I can't complain.
Fantastic. So glad you could join us. We'll go ahead and get started. Can you describe your childhood? What was it like? What about your friends? Did you fit in at school? What was your home life like? Do you recall any traumatic events from childhood? Just kind of a good description of what that period of time was like for you.
In my lifetime, I was blessed that a lot of people that have addiction issues had a traumatic past as a child. I did not. We did grow up poor, but neither one of my parents had issues like that. There was sometimes food was scarce, but other than that, my childhood experience wasn't bad. Through school, I was a jock. I knew a lot of people, but I didn't really hang out with anyone. I was kind of a loner. Everyone knew who I was because I was a jock, but other than that, I didn't really hang out with a lot of people. I was kind of a loner until I joined the Army when I got older. My youth, I was very much so a jock.
Okay.
And very much so a loner as well.
Gotcha. So during that time, did you experiment with drugs or alcohol in your childhood?
I never got high or drunk until I was 18 years old.
Okay.
The first time I got high was the first time I got drunk. I did it all at Bowling Green University many years ago, but I never drank in my life, never even smoked a cigarette until I was 18.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. And you said that you joined the armed forces, so was that prior to going to Bowling Green or after?
I never went to Bowling Green as college.
Oh, okay.
I went there just to party.
Okay.
That's
gotcha.
what I went up there for. No, I didn't go to college till my 30s. It was later on in life.
Gotcha. Okay. So after high school, what did you? So your first drink and getting high was at Bowling Green. I'm assuming visiting friends. What were you doing during that period of your life?
I was still in high school at that period of my life, so that was my senior year of high school.
Okay.
I turned 18 in October, my senior year of high school, so my parents had a little less control over what I did because legally I was an adult and went and visited a family member that was there and tried to do things that I thought was adult-like.
So after you started drinking and got high, did you continue, or was it all kind of one and done and sometime before you started again?
Until I had a pretty traumatic event happen later in life, that's what led to a lot of the use. But early on, no, I was one of those people that could have a beer with my steak. It was about almost 11 years ago, I lost my only child. And that was when, anything I dealt with in the Army, and before I'm doing what I do now, I had a career in law enforcement and corrections, dealt with a lot of traumatic things. As horrible as it sounds, none of it bothered me until that happened, and then it was like something changed in my brain. Started off with me just drinking once or twice. Then it became like a 6-pack every day. Then it would be when I got off work, I would put 5 beers in front of me. And that was just like, in my mind, that 5 beers was my first beer. Then later on, it moved on to escalate into cocaine, pills, harder liquor, to the point where at the worst, I was somewhere between 50 or 60 beers at least a day. At least.
Wow. So at that point, so you said that you lost a child, and I can't imagine that. I'm so sorry for that loss.
It's okay.
And that's so very much drinking to numb and not feeling anything is where I'm guessing things went.
Yeah, I was really angry, and I always make the joke, like with the guys I deal with at work, that when you're angry and you're in that dark space, early on you feel like you got power in it. Because at least you can control being angry. But you get so used to it, it's like with Star Wars, the dark side will consume you. That's what happened to me. I started off, and then I just got to the point where the one thing I felt was angry and just drank and used all the time. All the time. And then it progressed from there. Like a lot of people that served, I had PTSD. And it wasn't that bad until my alcohol use and stuff got bad. And it got to the point where I had about 6 or 7 suicide attempts, and I don't remember doing them. I have scars on my wrist from where they took everything sharp from me. I broke a kitchen plate and started sawing away at my wrists, and I don't remember doing it. So it got out of control after losing my son. That's when it really escalated. Then tried to get sober a few times. It didn't work out so well the first few times, but I'm one of those people now that if I drink, I'm either going to run out of money or consciousness. There's no moderation for someone like me.
Gotcha. So you said that your PTSD got worse as you drank. Was that surprising to you?
Yeah, for the longest time, I didn't think I was an alcoholic. For the longest time, I thought I just drank too much. To me, there was a difference in that because the idea of having that label I didn't want. So I guess it was surprising to me because at that point in my life, I wouldn't really accept I even had a problem. Like I just thought getting blackout drunk and putting your hand through your coffee table was, normal. I say this line with the guys at work a lot. Like it's like the flaw of the human condition that what's familiar is comfortable, and comfortable becomes your normal, whether it's healthy or not. To me, that was what I defined as normal. That was just how it was.
Absolutely.
So being sober, and I can look back at it and see like how toxic and damaging all that was. But then in the moment, it just felt like that was a Monday. That's just how things were.
How did you exist?
I really didn't. That was like my biggest thing was back then. I didn't. I just exist. I didn't live. It got to the point during the worst of my using. Every day I'd wake up and I would curse God. And I mean, like even when I first got into AA, I had a lot of the old timers look at me like I was crazy. When I said I don't doubt God's real, but he's a fucking asshole. Is what I used to say. I wouldn't say that now, but back then that's what I said. And I'd wake up every morning and I would pray to yell at God that he had me wake up again. And even I still have it in my phone to this day. I used to make out drafts that were like mini suicide letters, and I did that. I lived this way for almost 10 years. I have about 10 years worth of this in my phone, and it all started after losing my kid.
I can't imagine.
Mm.
So obviously you have made some significant changes in your life.
Yes,
You're
ma'am.
sitting with us here today.
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that you had a couple of attempts at getting sober. So what is your sobriety date?
March 18th, 2018.
Fantastic, congratulations. And what happened at that point in time that has led you to where we are today?
After my last drug and use, that was the 17th of March, St. Patrick's Day. I went out and got very, very inebriated, did a lot of cocaine. That's actually where I got these scars on my wrist from. Got blackout drunk. Someone I cared about very much. So at the time, I assaulted them. I don't remember doing it. I put my hand through an oak headboard, put my hand through the wall. They tried to take all the sharp objects from me. I broke a kitchen plate, sawed away at my wrists, and woke up that morning, not even knowing how I got there, covered in my own urine and puke on my couch. And my background before getting into what I do now, I worked in law enforcement for years. I was someone that tried to protect people, and like turn into the other side of that where I was the monster. I was that, and the worst part of it is not remembering doing it. And I don't know, I had, even back in the day, using all the time, countless, to the point where I don't own a gun anymore. It was always when I was blackout drunk, countless attempts where I was this close to not being here. If it wasn't for people intervening, I wouldn't be here. So it got to the point where I knew if I kept on doing what I was doing, that one of these blackouts of trying to kill myself, I was going to succeed. And if I'm going to hurt someone and have no recollection of doing it, to me, that makes it worse. Not that I want to hurt anyone, but at least if I remember what I did, not my proudest moment, but that's what led me into eventually going to Glen Bay to go to rehab, and from there working a 12-step program.
Okay. So one thing that I wanted to ask, how were your family and friend relationships affected in your active addiction?
They weren't too good. Everyone knew that I was like the hate tank. I was the raging guy. Back when I was using, if you ever used to watch the old TV show, The Jersey Shore, I acted like an extra from The Jersey Shore. I went to the gym, I tan, I did laundry, and I was getting drunk and getting in fistfights all the time. Like it wasn't so great. Even the idea where you saw me tear up a little bit here talking, I had no emotions. I was either hostile or hungry, and that was like it. That was it.
Yeah.
There was no emotional depth, no feelings, no remorse for being mean or raising my voice, or to me, that, like I said, that was just my baseline then.
Yeah. Sounds like a pretty miserable existence.
It was.
Did you so you had mentioned that people helped you along the way.
They did.
So you go into treatment and treatment is fantastic, but a lot of times we've talked about after treatment is when a lot of the work really starts.
Yeah.
That's very much a stabilization that's necessary and whatnot. So if you can think back to when you first got sober, what did a typical day look like for you?
I actually help guys with this all the time at work. So my main thing was I got really scheduled and I did things around the same time. That old saying, like an idle hand is the devil's playground, especially early on in sobriety, because you see a lot of people that hit 6 months sober. You see a lot less that hit a year. You see even less that hit 2 years. Just the idea about, getting a routine that I could stick to and truly stick to. Find good meetings to go to. Even after getting sober, I started going to get treatment for my PTSD, which was something I never really acknowledged I had. Found medication that helped with that, and even by doing that, I felt like I didn't want to drink as much, and just working a program, like actually working a program. Something I tell all those guys I work with is that you hear a lot of people say working a program. The key work there isn't program. The key word is you got to work. Like, you got to figure I didn't mess up my life overnight. I was doing that for almost 10 years. It took me some work to get to the point where I'm waking up drunk, passed out on my couch, covered in my own bodily fluids. It's going to take me some time and work to get on the other side of it. But just staying busy, like meetings, a lot of meetings, sometimes 2 or 3 days meetings, the gym. Tried church some, but I kind of still, if I'm going to be honest, a little conflicted about that. But it's staying busy.
Absolutely.
Finding things I was passionate about.
Very cool. And what are some of the things that you discovered that you were passionate about?
Doing what I do now, I never thought in a million years that I would be helping people with mental health and addiction issues try to find some recovery. Because I was like anyone that just knew me as Party Boy Jer would be like, "You're doing what now?" Like, that's been meaningful. Spending time with my family, finding good meetings to go to. After getting sober, I started doing something I never used to do. If you would have talked to me when I was using, I would have said lame. I'll go for walks out in nature, and I'll go off the trail and try to find local waterfalls or just weird little rock formations and stuff. I actually took my girlfriend to a few when walking around, and if you'd have talked to me 10 years ago, like, lame, what are you doing? Let's go get a beer. Now it's like, I look forward to this stuff now. Going, like, one of my first dates with my girlfriend, we went out to the beach and just sat out there with a blanket at night, like eating ice cream, watching the sun come down, which sounds like, to me, sound like a romantic comedy back in the day. I'm not watching that. It's a chick flick, but I live that way now. It's just found different things to be passionate about, just looking at what's around us. There's things to be happy about.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like you really have a sense of peace about you, which from your previous description of what life was like some time ago, that wasn't the case. How can you share the experience? Let me try that one more time.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like you have quite a bit of peace in your life today that was the opposite of active addiction. What is it that you can share how have you created that sense of peace for yourself?
It started by not being afraid to hope anymore, because for a long time, like, I'm trying not to cry. A long time, the idea of hope in any way, I just didn't do it, because I would have hope that this was going to get better, that would get better, and it never seemed to. It only seemed to get worse. And I believe there's many pathways to becoming sober, but for me, the idea of the term serenity, you hear that a lot in AA and NA, accepting the things that you can't change and changing the things you can and knowing the difference. The idea of being able to accept certain things, that this is just the hand you were dealt. My first sponsor used to have a saying that comparing life to poker, that you can be dealt, if you're any good at poker, you can be dealt the shittiest hand in the world and still win if you play the hand right. Like, I was dealt a few things in my life that weren't things I caused, they're just what happened to me. But it doesn't mean I still can't live a life. And just accepting the things that I struggled with. A big part of that after getting sober was getting a little uncomfortable and getting into therapy. And because I'm from the generation, you see the gray in my beard, that the idea of as a man showing emotion, talking to a therapist. Even when I was in the Army, they called the shrink, they would call him the wizard. And you only saw the wizard if you're going to be getting kicked out of the Army. I'm old enough where if you had PTSD, you were told shell shock originally. Now it's PTSD. So is it accepting that there's some things wrong with me and getting a little uncomfortable sometimes when it came to my recovery because I had to talk about things I didn't usually talk about. Had you met me even early on in my sobriety, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. I wouldn't have been able to do it. Like, I just wouldn't, or I'd have been sitting with my arms crossed, mean face, or it wouldn't have been an enjoyable conversation.
Right, right. So when you talk a little bit about the PTSD, and it sounds like there's been a progression of change over the past few years and multiple different episodes of PTSD, what have you found, or what can you share that has been helpful for you personally working through the PTSD?
Talking and finding medication that works. I know a lot of people in the sobriety community, I've gotten in with people about that. There's a difference between taking medication the way it's prescribed to a doctor and taking pills or snorting pills to make yourself feel better. It was a lot of that, just finding what worked for me and putting in work and therapy and being not suppressing my feelings all the time. Because like, I think the younger generation kind of has that a little better than the older generations, like us Gen Xers and baby boomers and older. You were taught if you're a man, you walk it off, you don't cry. You know what I mean? Like those type of things, accepting that I'm a human creature that has emotions. Like I'm gonna cry sometimes. I'm gonna be upset sometimes. And just being, I guess, like emotionally honest. Because before, the only emotion I would acknowledge was anger. Doing that and therapy and medication. I'll probably be on medication for the rest of my life, and I'm fine with it because I wake up every day and I don't make those angry emails or prayers to God anymore. I wake up happy.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's absolutely amazing. Did you have to go through some different trials to figure out which medication worked for you, and how was that experience?
Yeah. It was kind of, at first it was hard to trust in the process because a lot of medications have weird side effects. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you wake up feeling a certain way. It took a while, but I trust in the process. And luckily, my first sponsor was an amazing man, and he used to say this phrase, and it's true. And I share it with the guys I work with now that there's nothing wrong with having a problem. We all have problems. You shouldn't feel ashamed of having a problem. You should feel shame when you're doing nothing to fix your problem. And part of fixing my problem was getting my mental health under control too, because the majority of us that had issues with addiction, there's a dual diagnosis issue going on. You're not this substance use disorder. Not every person that has addiction comes from a trauma background, but a high majority of us come from something traumatic happening. No one wakes up and decides they want to be addicted to drugs and alcohol and lose everything and sleep in their car. Like no one starts off with their first drink, joint, line, or whatever thinking that. It's usually to try to mask something you're feeling.
Well, thank you for being so open about that, because it's as you said, it's sometimes in the recovery community not there's not as much of acceptance of being able to take medication, and clearly the different literature says, sought outside help where necessary, and being able to have people in your life that promoted and supported, I guess would be a better word, is really powerful, because it is important that we need to be able to get that help for a well-rounded person to become a well-rounded person. So,
and I would challenge anyone that says an issue about that to actually read the big book, because it says just the opposite.
Gotcha.
The idea that if you're taking medication the way a doctor prescribes it, you are not abusing it.
Right.
You are taking medicine. You wouldn't say that a diabetic was no longer in recovery because they took insulin every day.
Exactly.
If someone's bipolar and they're taking whatever every day, that doesn't make them any less in recovery. It means the same as that person that needs insulin. They're taking the medicine they need to be well.
I agree 100%. Yes.
Yeah.
We are 100% on the same page with
Yes,
that.
ma'am.
It's and it's really brave that you're willing to speak up and say that, because there's a lot of people out there that they live in fear, and they live, unfortunately, in that stigma of there's something wrong with me. That's a beautiful phrase that your sponsor shared with you. There's nothing wrong with having a problem. We all have problems. There's something wrong if you're not doing anything about it. So it's words to live by. So we've talked a bit about your recovery and the different things that you've done to be able to maintain your recovery. What are dreams that you have today in recovery that you otherwise would not have been possible?
The career change was the big thing. Um, Years of working in law enforcement and corrections, after I got sober, I felt like a hypocrite that I was shoving people in cages for the exact same stuff I was doing. So I left that. Currently, I just got my state licensure for a certified peer recovery supporter. I plan in the next couple months I'll be going to get my CDCA for my chemical dependency assistant, and ideally I'm just shy of my associate's degree in business. I'm planning to take the 6 months of classes I have to get my associate's degree in psychology, and I plan to have a career path in the mental health field. And someone like me that grew up the way I did, and in the era I was born, it's, I'm aware I give off a certain type A personality type, and I used to really be that type. So the idea that I'm working in this kind of space and pursuing a career in this space, that's probably the biggest change, or the thing that I'm looking for the most. Obviously the normal stuff, get a better house, everything everyone else wants, like those type of things. But as far as the biggest impactful thing would be the way my work life has changed and what I want to do for a living. Because I loved when I originally got in law enforcement was a verse in the Bible, Matthew 5:9, blessed are the peacemakers, so they should be called the sons of God. And I like to think that I'm still living that way, but helping with mental peace instead of physically having to restrain people. It's still peace. I'm still doing my part to get back to my community.
Absolutely. Can you share some examples of things that you have been able to do in recovery that otherwise have not been possible?
Have emotions. That was something I didn't have. Like before, my emotional spectrum was non-existent. And the ability to be emotionally honest with myself, that if something makes me sad, accepting I'm sad. If I'm happy, I'm happy. And just kind of accepting things for how they are. And when I was using, it was always like waiting for the next great thing to happen to me. I was never living in the moment. I was always either the past was condemning me, or I was looking for my next high, or I was never, I guess, present. And that's one thing that, as silly as it sounds, but anyone that's really no hope, hating being alive, to be able to be present in the moment, in yourself, by yourself, and be content with that. That was the biggest change for me. And that's when I think serenity and all that, that's what pops into my mind, is being able to have that. I never had that before I got sober. It just didn't exist.
Do you have any words of hope that you would like to share with somebody who is trying to get sober?
Doesn't happen overnight. All of us that end up with an issue did not get to the level of our issue overnight. Not saying if you were 10 years using, it did not take me 10 years to start figuring out what worked for me, but it'll take a little time. And it's the same line I use with all my guys, that it's called working a program. Program's not the key word, it's work. You have to want it more than you wanted drugs and alcohol, which sounds obvious, and I can say for most of us that have drug and alcohol problems, we come from a trauma background. Once you get sober, you actually have the ability to work on that trauma. I originally started going to therapy for my PTSD and other past traumas while still using, and all it did was make me drink more when I got home. It's kind of hard to tackle that issue when you have other issues. But it does get better. It just takes time, and you have to trust in the process, because it's not built in a day. It takes time.
We haven't talked a ton about your relationships. I know that you said that you enjoy having a relationship with a girlfriend. You know what, let me try that again. Let's see here. So let's see here. Can you talk a little bit about the relationships that you currently have in your life with family members, friends? How is that?
My family relationship's great now. It's awesome that my mom doesn't worry about me anymore. At points in my life with that woman through hell, so it's nice to have my mom not worried about me. Even if things aren't going perfect, she knows that I'm going to wake up the next day now, so that part's awesome. As far as dating life goes, I think I'm in the first healthy relationship I've ever been in, and I'm almost 40 years old, so. But she's sober as well. She has a little over a year of sobriety too, and it's helpful. I hang out with a lot more like-minded people than I used to. I don't really go out to bars anymore. My drinking buddies from back in the day, they might be on my Facebook and I'll wish them happy birthday, but we're not hanging out anymore. It's kind of changed my circle a little bit. But the relationships are actually quality now, like where I actually can have conversations that are impactful, or even like when it comes to relationships with women. Before, I was pretty much just a hyper womanizer. That's what I was. Now I'm not. Like, I've gone periods of my life where I've been celibate for 6 months or longer just because I wanted to work on me. Back in the day when using, no, that was, I wasn't going a week. Back now it's, the priorities are different and the relationships are more quality. Like, I actually enjoy talking with people now. Before, no, there's no talking.
Right, right. No, and that's important to be able to share that life does change. I mean, it is a different way to live life. But what we're continuing to be able to see are things like having peace, being able to have quality relationships, being able to look at yourself in the mirror when you wake up in the morning, being excited to wake up in the morning. And that's not something that happens overnight. So would you say that over the past, so little over 4 years, that this transformation to where you're at today is something that has come because of one specific thing, or would you say there's a whole slew of things, and you could maybe go through and name what that slew of things are?
Whole slew of things. Like, it's there are some people that are blessed that can just wake up one day and say, I'm not drinking no more. That wasn't my journey. For me, it involved going to rehab. It involved working on my mental health and actually talking to a professional, getting uncomfortable in these meetings. Most days I cried when going through therapy. Things like that. Finding medication that worked. Changing the circle of people I hung around with. Like, when I first got sober, I was still in a relationship with a woman that used. I'm no longer with that woman. I don't speak to that woman. Making changes in my life that were kind of hard. See, what else? Changing some of the circles of people, medication, therapy, and doing self-care things. Cause you got to find something you're passionate about. Like, I don't care if it's playing Madden on the Xbox. You got to find something that you're passionate about, because
Life's worth living now.
it is. It is.
Absolutely. Are there any? Is there anything that we missed that you would like to share with us that we didn't ask about?
For me, the biggest change, and I hope anyone that's watching eventually find, because eventually you can find hope again. And for me, being able to hope again was the moment things started coming back together. Because for a long time, I didn't hope for anything. And now I do. I wake up and I know I'm going to go home. I know I'm going to spend time with my beautiful girlfriend. I'm hopeful for what tomorrow brings work-wise and everything else. The idea of hope, it comes. It just takes time.
Absolutely. Well, we really appreciate you coming out to our event in Lorain County. Your story is going to help so many people that think that they are alone and that there is no hope. You are proof that there's a way out of addiction. Thank you so much.